Is Flo Rida? Is he going to be all elite as well?
All elite Scooby Doo.
Because that does seem to be, and somehow we made the transition to this topic using Flo Rida, but
it was kind of a stretch.
Kind of transition. We made it. It doesn't matter how we got there. Clark Griswold told us that as long as you get to the destination, that's the important part. But AEW is certainly making a lot of a buzz. I don't, whether you want to call reports news or not, that's another story. But last night on Dynamite, some hard news that we do know is next week it will be Chris Jericho, the Painmaker, Chris Jericho, in a no DQ match against none other than Nick F'N Gage. So R.I.P. Chris Jericho. It was nice knowing you, pal.
The Painmaker.
The Painmaker.
Waking up with pain in your back, Jericho does not make you the Painmaker.
So like that, the buzz yesterday, of course, talks of Daniel Bryan possibly signing, CM Punk possibly getting his name back in the ring there, but Nick Gage showing up on Dynamite, I don't know if anybody had that one on their radar. Pretty cool. I mean, you figured the what is it, the 5 Temptations of Jericho or whatever the fuck.
Oh my God!
the labors
of Jericho.
That's right, because he's fat and he looks like he's going into labor. Well played by MGF on that one.
He's constantly laboring in the ring.
Dude, he was blown up big time.
I believe there's a sound effect that goes, "It's a glandular problem."
Do I still have that one? Yes.
Stop it! Cut it out! I have a glandular problem.
Yep.
Now, folks, you'll notice that the rumors are still rumors, and that Daniel and Punk have not signed yet because Jim referred to them as such, and not Brian and Phil.
Yeah, Brian and Phil are not there yet. But that's been obviously the biggest buzz of the last 24, 36-ish hours, is that Brian Danielson reportedly has already reached an agreement with AEW. There was some reports yesterday from Fightful that CM Punk is kind of considering getting back in the water. I think there was one earlier today, maybe Ringside News. So that one, you really got to take it with a grain of salt. That deal with Punk and AEW is already a done deal. That's 2 big heavy hitters that Punk's been talked about for years. When's he coming back? Where's he coming back? Daniel Bryan possibly moving to AEW. What does that do for the dynamic in the wrestling world? Is that to me, that does feel fairly seismic, right?
Not Punk.
You don't think Punk is?
I think Punk's return to the ring is big enough. Punk himself as a wrestler is probably not going to be big. It would be like Punk in UFC. It was a big draw until he had his first fight.
Yeah.
Punk's he's on the wrong side of 40, but he is still younger than, like Styles and Cena.
And Goldberg.
And Bill Goldberg.
If anything, I feel like for Bryan Danielson, this is a huge thing, especially if Daniel is the gateway drug to get the Bellas.
Do you really think that they would make that jump, though?
Brie
what
would.
Else are they doing?
Yeah.
Well, good. They can have Brie. That's fine.
But Brie and Nikki are a package deal.
They generally are.
They fit in great in the women's division.
Even then, like, if they want to get back in, if AEW wants to continue to like look into the reality television gimmick with roads to the top, like they've got Brie and Nikki.
Right, because I don't know. I mean, I think Total Bellas is
done-ish.
Yeah.
That's too bad. Like Total Bellas.
Ryan loved it.
He did. I'm
he
sad
actually,
for Ryan.
I think he was really upset when they first
moved
the network to the Peacock because I don't think Total Bellas had made the jump at first. So
that's why he's always complaining about.
That's why he's been really salty for the last couple of months.
Yeah,
that's why he got back on his candy cigarettes.
Oh, Mark's gone. We lost Mark. What the? There we go. I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think Punk would feel bigger if it wasn't hitting the wrestling media world ahead of time. Like if you're tuning into Dynamite and it's the top of the 9 o'clock hour and Cult of Personality hits, I feel like that's bigger than like, hey guys, CM Punk signed. Because I know it's got to be a cool moment when he actually debuts, but I don't feel it's going to have the same punch.
Yeah, I also don't think it's going to be Cult of Personality.
Really?
Yeah.
Because that was the last.
It'll be his AFI theme.
Okay.
From when he was in the Indies. Because I mean,
still that would get a pop. Probably not as big as Cult of Personality, but
I don't know, man. People can like. While Cult of Personality is definitely more well known as like a fan or as like a person, people know Cult of Personality. The wrestling fans, like the AEW fans, that AFI song, is.
Yeah, I think that's a solid point because I think AEW fans are more tuned into that, probably that part of it.
Yeah.
Than the mainstream quote unquote fan.
But I mean, if they want the bigger pop, then they probably would have to go with the more recognizable to the universal wrestling fan, which is COP.
Yeah, I just think the moment will. I think not, the reports coming out now because it's like, okay, well, are we waiting until All Out? Are we waiting till after All Out? Are we going before All Out? Like
Tony Khan has an announcement next week on Dynamite.
Well, that's true. I thought it would be for some sort of show announcement, but maybe it.
I bet you it's Bryan Danielson. Where is it? Where are they at next week?
Seattle. No, I'm just kidding.
Tacoma.
I honestly don't even know where they're at next week.
Are they back in Jacksonville?
No, Jacksonville is
homecoming is next weekend.
Is August 4th, 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah. So
yeah, I don't know.
What if it's what if it is an announcement for an announcement?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Like,
wouldn't shock me at this point.
I'm going to announce that the newest AEW signee will be in attendance next week.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because Tony Khan has said numerous times he is not a on-screen character.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be something big.
You would hope, unless he's just ego stroking himself.
Stroking it.
What? He's stroking. What does I had this question when the news started kind of coming out about Bryan is what does, if anything, what does the Bryan signing to AEW mean to WWE? Do you think it means anything? Do you think it's a blip on their radar, or is it just okay?
The more and more that AEW is in effect or in the game, the more and more I'm returned to the Monday Night Wars or the Monday Night War. WWE loses Hogan, Luger, Savage, Diesel, Razor, 1-2-3 Kid, they Earthquake, Duggan, and like they lose all of these recognizable names to the competition.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, like WCW puts the boots to them for 83 weeks, famously. And eventually, like, you know, they don't pull it out. But at the same time, nobody from like AEW is saying that these guys are from WWE. Like the outsiders were basically like, oh my God, these guys are from the other place. They're going to take us over and put us out of business.
Right.
Everybody who's come in from your big shows and your Mark Henrys and your Chavo Guerreros and your Andrade El Ídolos and your John Moxleys and your Pacs and your Codys, all of them,
Right.
they're putting over how great AEW is.
Right.
It's not like where I've been, it's where I'm at.
Right.
And if they keep doing that, especially with Daniel Bryan, with this Forbidden Door crap.
Well, I think the Bryan signing is so he could work in Japan and he can do things that WWE wasn't going to let him do.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, as I kind of thought about it, this could possibly be one of the better things for WWE, I think. Because if we want to look back and we want to make a similar comparison to the Monday Night Wars, when you lost all of those guys that you named over to WCW, it forced you to look at the Rockies and the Austins and the Mick Foleys and all of these other guys that may not have gotten that look if Hogan and Savage and all of those guys remained in the WWE. If Brett didn't leave, if any number of things didn't occur, if Shawn didn't lose his smile and get hurt and have to go away. So if you're losing Daniel Bryan, who has been such a huge part of the last decade of WWE program, decade plus, or close to a decade, and you lose CM Punk, who was such a big part of you, and you know Andrade was a future star, and all of these guys, and women, you know, if we start to see more women, if the Bellas leave, like. You know, that's like a WWE entity. You know, we can make jokes about the Bella twins and their in-ring work or whatever, and in their, but that's a WWE entity. That's something that I don't think a year ago we would have ever said. There's a possibility the Bellas go and work somewhere in another wrestling company. I don't think we'd ever seen that. So maybe this is an opportunity for if all of these pieces start leaving and bigger pieces start ending up on AEW, it's going to force the WWE to look within itself and, redo what they did. And I get the business is infinitely different now than it was back then. And it's not, and Vince isn't going to put Tony Khan and AEW out of business. I think that whenever AEW isn't AEW anymore, if that ever happens, comes to a point where the Khans go, this isn't financially working for us anymore because they're business people. So if it's not financially working, that's when they pull the plug. I don't think Vince is going to put them out of business. I think the world's very much different. But I think this is a situation where if WWE, and to AEW's credit, I mean, I've been on record on the show and on Facebook posts that I don't think AEW is going to do 1 million consistently. Well, they've done, and ratings are ratings. I'm not putting a lot of focus on them, but they've done them over 1 million the last 2 weeks. There's no reason to believe that this week will be any different or the following week will be any different. And the shows reflected. The shows have been great. They really have.
This week, I think they did a 1.1 with a 4.4 share or something like that.
Yeah, I mean they're
getting those views and putting on the quality of shows that they are, that's just going to increase. Like you're
exactly.
saying.
So, and if I know SmackDown had to jump last week, Raw had to jump, and so the fans being back is helping everybody. So that's beneficial all around. But like, if things don't start to shift and change, and you start getting Punk and Bryan and all of this, if there comes a point where, and I get different nights, but if AEW's number is higher than Raw's number, I think that's where Vince is going to become Vince. I think that's where things may shift a little bit there.
Here's where the comparisons to the Monday Night War stop. The two of the three names that you mentioned that WWE pulled from to make stars were discarded WCW talents. Mick Foley, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Who are they going to get that is their Austin? They're discarded. Like, AEW would have to lose somebody.
Well, I mean,
because who's the most underutilized non-WWE name in AEW? Could you think of one?
Would have been Miro until the last couple of weeks.
But he's a WWE
guy.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, underutilized non-WWE guy.
I mean, there's got to be some. I mean, that roster is gigantic. I mean,
it is, but that's the thing is, like, who would that top person be? It's not somebody who you would say would be Stone Cold Steve Austin.
True.
Let me look at their roster and see if I can pick someone.
Yeah, like, I would have said in a different time Joey Janela.
Yeah.
But not anymore. I wouldn't pay to have Joey Janela on my roster.
Well, and I think that's the thing too, is like AEW's roster is bloated. Like, I think there's got to come a point where, financially speaking, again, businessman being a businessman, like that roster, there's got to be some trimming coming on that roster. And I think some of those early deals are probably coming due anyway.
I mean, does it though? Does that roster need trimming?
I mean, if I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, and that is a long list.
They have a lot
of wrestlers.
And I'm not denying the cool factor of Impact superstars showing up on AEW and vice versa, and New Japan and stuff like that. But when you're utilizing other talent, there's plenty of talent on your roster that's not being used at the same time as well. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So there's definitely a lot that could be utilized different, and maybe when Rampage comes though.
And another thing too is, like, WWE isn't the spot that it was back in the day. Like, there are maybe some people who aspire to still, like, one day I'll go to the WWE. But it's not like the destination like it was in the 90s for wrestlers. Like, oh, I got to make it to New York. Now, wrestlers are more interested in, like, the art of wrestling and being wrestling for wrestling and not wrestling for entertainment. Like the whole Finn Balor argument from NXT, where he was like, WWE is the movies and NXT is Broadway. AEW is a lot of Broadway. Like, there's some entertainment aspects. There's some sports entertainment that's there.
Oh, I think they're very heavy on sports entertainment, and that's not a shot.
Right.
But it is. I mean, look, I have watched the Sting Orange Cassidy clip from last night.
My God.
More times than I can care to count. And I mean, a year ago, I didn't quote unquote get Orange Cassidy, but I mean, it's fantastic. Like that clip is, yeah, right. Like fucking Sting I mean, how fucking great was that interaction? That's sports entertainment. Like, they're doing it well. And I mean, it's been no secret that the person on this show that has probably been the most critical of that company, and the fact that they've been a sports entertainment company since the beginning, has been me. But they're doing it well enough that, like, that thought isn't even there for me anymore. Like them being the sports alternative is so distant that they're doing what they do so well that they're just doing it.
Yeah. Part of another thing with like AEW though is they're doing all this cool stuff, but rooted in it is they're pretty much putting on the exact same show every week.
Oh, I agree.
Let's look at Dynamite. Except for the United States title match to close out the show, every match on Dynamite had a finish that involved one or more persons outside of the ring doing something.
Oh, I've taken notice that like there was with the last pay-per-view, there was all but one match that had some form of outside interference or faction gang war on the outside.
The Jericho match had the run-in with Tully Blanchard and Sammy.
Mm-hmm.
The women's title match had two things with Vicky and Rebel.
Mm-hmm.
Darby and Wheeler was caught up with the Sting and OC stuff.
Yep.
I'm trying to think what else was on the card. Orange Cassidy and the Blade had run in with the Bunny.
Yep. Did Gallows and
Anderson jumped in on the Gallows match?
Yeah. So I mean, literally every match had except for the one that wasn't even for an AEW title.
It's like there's no clean winners or losers, and like eventually you're going to keep doing that, and it's going to build to critical mass. Yes. And eventually you have to have clean winners and losers.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
right. And that's probably been my only or / biggest complaint is and I think it was somewhere around the middle of the show I tweeted out how every match on the show so far had some sort of like ring apron interference. So it's those sort of things that it probably need to be watched a little bit with them. But I think people, whether it's consciously or not, people I think for quote unquote forgive them for that or look past that with them because like they're the cool new toy. Like WWE, and they do. I mean, this past Monday on Raw was how many times have we seen Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley, or how many times have we seen a version of like the Viking Raiders versus AJ and almost like we've seen a lot of repetitive matches on WWE, and I hope that coming out of the Thunderdome and Money in the Bank weekend fog, we start to see more new stuff with them, more superstars being utilized. WWE gets criticized fairly for being repetitive. AEW, I don't think it's the same because they have different wrestlers competing, but they have the same finishes or the same shenanigans on the outside. So like they're being repetitive in a different way, and maybe it's just not consciously as noticeable because it's happening in a different match maybe. But the Punk thing, the Bryan thing, definitely something we're going to need to watch. And we'll keep an eye on. I haven't posted anything about it because it's at this point it is kind of still more in like the rumor realm as opposed to the actual news realm. But one more thing tonight before we get out of here, Money in the Bank, and this is the first time, and I know like people have talked about it before, but Money in the Bank, every match on the card had some form of stipulation on it, whether it was the briefcase or for a title. And it was the first time that it for whatever reason, it really struck me in the head. Like, I think WWE has too many titles. And maybe it's because like after every match, I'm posting, and new or the Money in the Bank winner to our Facebook page. I'm like, wow, every single match on this card has something attached to it. There's not just a tag team versus a tag team or a single versus a single. Like, is it possible for WWE at this point? And I don't know if it's because USA wants their own set of titles and Fox wants their own set of but like, even if you want to have a world championship and a universal title, but like, can we combine the tag titles? Can we combine the US title and the Intercontinental title? Can we not have a women's title because we don't have a women's tag title because we don't have a women's tag division? Maybe only have one women's I don't know, but like it just and I think Tim, you and Marcus on one of your shows talked about going back to brand specific pay-per-views. Maybe that's the answer. If it's not unifying titles, maybe it's the brand specific, because then you would have matches that are just matches and can build up the undercard to eventual titles.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that if you start merging titles, then you want to talk about seeing the same matches every week. You're going to see like the same dudes on every show with the title.
That's true.
Like, remember when like Seth Rollins was Intercontinental Champion because Brock Lesnar was World Champion? Like, when you lessen the number of titles, the bigger fish who should be main eventers drop down to the mid card. Like, I feel like the number of titles we have right now is perfect. With the exception of maybe the women's tag title, but that's because it's an underserviced division.
Sure. It's not the women's tag title's fault.
The titles are great.
And that WWE's mismanaged the division.
Like, the titles are great. Like, at the same time, like, AEW has, like, they're about to create a 6-man title.
Is that for real? Like, okay.
Yeah, like, I think it's coming. That might
maybe that's Tony's announcement.
Yeah, but like, think about the number of 3-person teams in AEW. No division, no title. You could name like 8.
Yeah, because everybody's in a faction or a group. I mean,
correct.
Even Christian is like now with
the Jurassic Express.
With the Jurassic Express.
Yeah, it's like it's very Japanese, and like everybody's got their team.
Right.
WWE's like, could you name me 4 teams on Raw or SmackDown for the women's tag titles?
No.
4.
You literally have
Nia and Shayna, Natalya and Tamina.
Right.
Shotzi and Knox.
That was on delay.
And then who?
That's it. Like, that's literally it.
Yeah, there's no one.
I'm glad I picked 4. Like, I'm glad that was my, like, because I was gonna say 3, and I'm like, no.
But like, yeah, I thought they were breaking up Shayna and Nia this week, but instead Nia just headbutted Reginald.
Right, and then Reginald wins the 24/7 title.
Right, which I thought they had just gotten done away with, and I'm like, oh, which I mean, it doesn't. They for a joke title, they dramatically underutilized that during the pandemic, because you could have done a lot of fun things with that during the pandemic. But I mean, you can do the chase and whatever with fans, but I thought they were going to just silently make that disappear. But yeah, maybe that's the answer: brand specific pay-per-views, because then you can have just 2 guys on SmackDown wrestling each other for no reason than to just have a match.
But so lately though, you've been building to Money in the Bank.
Right.
And everything revolves around Money in the Bank. SmackDown, you're probably not going to have a lot of, because you think you're going to have Rollins and Edge as a non-title match. SummerSlam's going to be huge. It's going to be 4 hours.
Yeah,
I'm
SummerSlam's
sure.
a big one. I think after SummerSlam, things are going to start making more sense. 'Cause
Right.
we're just trying to get to SummerSlam at this point.
Right. And then things will be a little bit better.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this before we wrap up? I know Tim, you and Mark have some hard outs here at the top of the hour. So any other thoughts on the things we've talked about? Otherwise, we're going to close this thing up.
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah, we're right on top.